Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President and Senate colleagues, today we are considering House File 2416, which would exclude the participation of transgender girls from participating in both K-12 and collegiate sports. We're talking about this bill because there has been an enormous amount of attention given to this topic by Governor Reynolds, other Republican politicians, Fox News, and various right-wing media outlets. There's been an astonishing amount of energy and discussion of this issue, and like many of you, I've received more correspondence on this topic from both sides than I was expecting. At the heart of this issue is a question of fairness. What is fair? What is right? Even though we may have different perspectives on this topic, everyone involved in this conversation wants to agree on what is fair. Now, our state athletic associations have had participation guidelines on transgender athletes in place for 15 years. And there has been not a single complaint filed. So what exactly are we doing here? To be sure, there are legitimate concerns on both sides of this issue about fairness in athletics, and reasonable people can disagree about how we draw those lines around participation. But the bill that we are debating today is not a reasonable conversation about where to draw those lines. This bill is a political wedge being used to divide us, and it does not have to be this way. If this body is interested in finding a fair solution, we should start over. We could bring together a panel of experts who actually understand transgender people, the physiology of cross-sex hormones, stakeholders in high school and collegiate athletics who routinely make decisions about rules and fairness in athletic competition, and others who could help us consider the current guidelines in place and to discuss this issue in a fair and nonpartisan and non-political way, a way that balances our concerns about fairness in athletics with our Iowa values of inclusion, equality, self-determination, and the freedom to be who we are. But that is not what this bill does, Mr. President. By voting yes on this bill, you are voting against a fair, nonpartisan, and non-political solution. To those of you who are watching this debate at home, you might be wondering to yourself, why is the state legislature debating the participation of transgender athletes? Isn't there more important work for the legislature to focus on? To the people watching at home, I could not agree with you more. When the Iowa General Assembly convened at the start of this year, Democrats and Republicans agreed that the number one issue facing our state was the workforce crisis that is ravaging our economy. We know that we are facing unique worker challenges in our state, but rather than bring forward real solutions to the Reynolds workforce crisis, Iowa Republican politicians have decided to pour gasoline on the culture war fires and embrace the worst form of identity politics, pitting Iowans against each other. But why? Why does this have to be political? Why does this legislature have to further police the lives of some of the most marginalized people in our society? Nobody is saying that we can't discuss or debate this issue, but to put forward such an exclusionary and divisive piece of legislation makes it really clear what's going on here. For Republican politicians, this issue isn't about fairness. It's about scoring political points and a willingness to play politics with the lives of children in order to score those points. To everyone watching at home, you should understand that under the watch of Iowa Republicans, our economy has slid into crisis with literally every industry in our state being affected by the Reynolds workforce crisis. Iowa Republicans are hoping that if Iowa voters are focused enough on banning trans girls from playing with their teammates, you won't notice all the help wanted signs. We're hoping that if you are worried about keeping young transgender Iowans out of environments where they're safe and included and a part of their community, you won't notice how hard it is to start a new business because you can't hire workers. They're hoping that if we are divided and pitted against each other, you won't notice that Iowa Republicans are actively working to make the workforce crisis worse by driving young people and their families out of our state. And that is exactly what brings this ban forward that we are debating today. If enacted, it will hurt not only transgender Iowans, their family, their friends, their teammates, and their classmates. This legislation will hurt all Iowans. When Iowa Republicans advance divisive and polarizing legislation like this proposal, they send a clear message. This state is more interested in waging the culture war than in growing our economy, creating more jobs, and building thriving, welcoming communities for all of us. For years, business leaders have told us over and over and over that proposing legislation that excludes LGBTQ people from full participation in daily life is bad for Iowa. We know that these bills have negative impacts on our workforce, on recruitment, on retention, and on productivity. Now, I'm a Democrat, so I don't always agree with corporate America, but some of the world's biggest businesses are fighting against legislation like this, and they've got it right. I want to read you parts of a national letter that over 150 national businesses have sent to legislatures that are considering trans athlete bans like the one that we're debating today. Quote, "The companies joining this statement do business, create jobs, and serve customers throughout the United States. Fairness, equal treatment, and opportunity are central to our corporate values because we care about our employees and the customers that we serve. What's more, these values also matter to our bottom lines. We are deeply concerned by the bills being introduced in state houses across the country that single out LGBTQ individuals, many specifically targeting transgender youth, for exclusion or differential treatment. These bills would harm our team members and their families, stripping them of opportunities and making them feel unwelcome and at risk in their own communities. As such, it can be exceedingly difficult for us to recruit the most qualified candidates for jobs in states that pursue such laws, and these measures can place substantial burdens on the families of our employees who already reside in these states. As we make complex decisions about where to invest and grow, these issues can influence our decisions. America's business community has consistently communicated to lawmakers at every level that such laws have a negative impact on our competitiveness. As business leaders, we call for public leaders to abandon or oppose efforts to enact this type of discriminatory legislation and ensure fairness for all Americans. But you don't need to take it from corporate America. Today, I'm asking all my colleagues to keep an open mind and a willingness to learn from the younger generation of Iowans. These young people have things to teach all of us. For example, take North Liberty High School senior Ashlyn Keeney. Ashlyn is a high school student who has won multiple titles at the Iowa State track meet and was named Gatorade's Iowa Athlete twice. Ashlyn represents what many of her generation believe when it comes to this issue. In a recent op-ed to the Des Moines Register, she wrote the following, quote, "Gender identity shouldn't play a role in the opportunities we are allowed. Everyone deserves equality, respect, and support, values that lie within the heart of Iowa girls' sports. Transgender women are women. They deserve the same respect, support, and opportunities as all other women. The opportunity up for discussion here is the most basic one, the inclusion of transgender women in sports. We can preserve the fairness of high school girls' sports with methods that do not include exclusion. Even if I were to encounter a teenage athlete with a competitive advantage, I would rather be beaten by a transgender girl at a high school meet than for her to be excluded from the sport she loves. Fair means fair to all. You can care about both cisgender women and transgender women. They are real women and deserve to be treated as such." Ashlyn, I could not have put it any better myself. I hope that our state can convince Ashlyn and her teammates to stay in Iowa and to put down roots in our state. But when people like Ashlyn watch the Republican-controlled legislature pass laws that pit Iowans against each other instead of bringing us together, it's not a mystery why so many of our young people are choosing to leave our state. But Mr. President, it does not have to be this way. If we want to keep incredible young women like Ashlyn in our state, we need to hear their voices and take heed of what our next generation of Iowans, our future workers and entrepreneurs and leaders are saying to us. They want to live in a place where everyone is treated with fairness and with respect. Mr. President, if we are truly concerned about fairness and not politics, let's vote no on this bill and start over. Let's show Iowans what we can do when we come together instead of turning us against each other. Thank you, Mr. President.